Well, after 20 years of doing driver's talk one way, it's time to move on to bigger and better things. But before we go, we thought we'd share with you, after all these shows, a number of clips that we thought stood out and were particularly fun to go do. So myself, Rick Titus, Jay Dalton, well, why don't we show a few of them? Because as we went back through them, they were pretty funny.
They are pretty funny. So let's get right into the clips.
Yep.
One of our favorites, and we have quite a few we're going to share with you.
Yep.
One of our favorites is Adam Carolla. And Adam Carolla describing one of his favorite race cars.
Well, he's a rabid race car collector. He really is into it, and he races a lot of them. But this one in particular, well, we'll just roll to it.
Out of that collection of race cars, and I know you've driven every single one of them, what have you found the most fun to drive? And I'm going to jump in and say I bet you it's the 510.
The 510, it's not driven in a vacuum. It's driven in a race. And one of the best classes is that sort of B sedan 2.5 Trans Am, and it's you and Alfa Romeo GTVs and GTAs and BMW 2002s,
Yep.
and then a whole bunch of 510s and an occasional 610 or something like that. And that is a very fun, competitive group. There might be 40, 44 cars out there, all dicing it up. Honestly, one of the best times I ever had was driving that BRE 510, driving the BRE Roadster and winning the Rolex Cup actually at Monterey in it a few years back, and just getting in a group of Alfa Romeos and just dicing it up with those guys like lap after lap. Something about the open and no windshield basically, and
Right.
I wasn't wearing an aero helmet, so I kind of made a mistake. But boy, that's a little car, and you're hanging out of it, and there's no windshield, and you're really throwing it around. And I mean, your right leg is pinched between the gear shift and the steering wheel, and I'm just too big for that car.
Yeah,
honestly.
you are. You're a lot taller than John Morton.
Elbows are hanging out of it, but it's still, that thing's just a gas to drive. And then the big cars, with the 600, 700 horsepower are great when the turbo kicks in and you just feel yourself getting pinned to the back of the seat, and it's just, they're all different. It's really kind of who are you racing with, not so much the car itself.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point.
Well, 510s are wonderful. In fact, a lot of people perceive them as the Japanese BMW 2002. He's certainly got a collection of those. And the one he has, everyone would like to own. But he takes his collection a notch further, Jay, when he goes to that Newman car.
Yes, he has a couple of Paul Newman cars, one of which is a 300ZX 2+2 race car. Bob Sharp, as you can imagine, from 1987. Everybody will know it if you remember back, the Planters Peanut car. He takes this Z car up the Goodwood Hill climb.
But that's by invite only, is it?
By invite only,
Okay.
but he's very special to get that invite.
If you guys are listening and you want to kind of just, what we're talking about, you can just do like a Google image search and just, Paul Newman 300ZX 2+2 1987, and you'll see the car I'm talking about. You can also see me go up the hill if you want to check it out as well. You can just YouTube that. But I have Paul Newman's 1988 300ZX 2+2. They built a little longer car for Daytona. And the sister car, the 87, came up for sale, and it was in England. And I said, well, if I'm going to buy it, and it's in England, just keep it, and I'll come to you and bring it to Goodwood. And they met me at Goodwood, and I drove it up the hill at Goodwood.
That's quite a different event for you because you're a road race guy. This is a dead-end street. What was that like?
It's a really fun event. It's really interesting because they get so many people. I mean, the place gets 150,000 people there. It's not like it is out here in the States, meaning they're not casual race fans over there. They literally I mean, you don't, I do a lot of vintage races out here, and, you can go to Fontana and there'll be 3 people in the stands.
Right. And they're relatives of people who are racing.
Yeah. You go to Monterey, you get a decent crowd, depending on, what corner, but it's not like the bleachers are packed. You go to Goodwood, it's packed all the way up the course, all the way, side by side, people stacked 10 deep, it never ends. They love it.
We talk about motorsports and racing, a little bit of our own history. We were associated with the Saleen automotive team at the time, racing team, on the Saleen Mustangs. We had a lot of famous drivers, and a very interesting little incident occurred during one of our driver pre-qualifying meetings. Well, we'll let Desiree tell you. Des, one of my favorite stories to tell about you is that while we're sitting, I was in the motorhome with Steve Saleen, Pete Halsmer, myself, and we're trying to decide who's going to go out and qualify the car. It's raining now. And while we were having that discussion, you went ahead and put it on the pole. So I've never forgotten that.
What course was that?
That was Road Atlanta.
Road Atlanta.
Yeah,
okay.
Here we are. Saleen's trying to figure out who amongst us should go out there and qualify now. And well, it turns out Des was already out there. And by the way, setting fast time. So.
We spent many hours at racetracks together.
Yep.
6-hour races, 12-hour races, 24-hour races. But this is the first time when we're really going to ask you where this all came from, Des. You grew up the daughter of a national motorcycle champion in South Africa. I bet your dad, Charles Randall, had a huge impact on your life.
Oh, yes. I mean, absolutely. From the age of 5, I used to spend all my time in the garage with my dad, watching him build these motorcycles and so forth. And I guess I just grew up knowing that one day, he'd probably want to put me on a motorcycle.
Well, there you have it. While we're swinging around on the Mochizo, she's out there getting it done. Desiree was an awesome race driver and a teammate to be with. Went on to win a Porsche Cup championship. She's a big hero in South Africa. Won a Formula One non-points race. I'm telling you, the lady can hustle a race car very, very hard.
Another champion that we got to interview at the time was the funny car great, Jack Beckman.
Yeah.
There's a big story to Jack Beckman, but we'll let him do some of the talking here.
I've been a race driver for a lot of years, and there's distractions at some point. You got to shut that switch off. And your crew's making changes based on the input you gave them upon your return and what they got off data acquisition that affect what you have to do next, because the car doesn't launch the same every time. How do you get that material process through your head and still deal friendly and smile at people who still have a desire to talk to you and get an autograph?
It's pretty easy, Rick. When I launch the car, I close my eyes.
Oh, good.
I
Good practice.
Count to 4, hit the parachute, and yank the handbrake and hope the thing slows down. So the reality is, and I'm not downplaying what drivers do, but in a nitro car, we don't shift gears. We don't have to press a high-speed lean out or a clutch lock-up button. Our job is really not to screw up the crew chief and the crew's job. The crew's job is to bolt that thing together perfectly every time, and the clutch guy has to be exactly consistent to the 0.005 of an inch every single time, and the crew chiefs make all the tuning decisions. Now, often we'll get on the radio and they'll say, hey, listen, we're going to switch over to the other lane. Remember, this lane's going to tend to pull you towards the center line when you get out to half track, or hey, there's some bald spots on the starting line. We're going to move you over 2 feet for the burnout, but back you up 3 feet over the other way so we're in fresh rubber, so you're going to have to drive it back in the middle of the lane.
Wow.
And frankly, that's about all I can remember.
Yeah, good point. I don't know why they call them funny cars. 10,000 horsepower, 1,000 feet in about 3.5 seconds, better than 330 miles an hour. That's not funny. I'm not doing it. Perhaps.
That's terrifically serious business. How about the one and only Las Vegas resident, Rob MacCachren?
Yep.
You can't say Baja 1000 without mentioning Rob MacCachren.
How many races have you actually taken in 1 year? Do you actually do sometimes?
Well, usually now we're about 30 green flags a year, but there was a few years back we actually were in the mid 80s green flags. racing the Torque Series back in the Midwest, the Lucas Oil Series. We raced the Best in the Desert Series, the Score Series, and that was the inaugural year of the SST Series with Robbie Gordon. So it was a great year. We got to travel all over, West Coast, East Coast. We got to travel up to Toronto, Canada, racing there with the Indy cars. It was a really, really fun year.
I don't know that people understand or fully appreciate, Rob. Racing is so consuming. You think you come home and you're going to kick it for a few days. You're not.
Yeah.
The wick's right back up. Yesterday's victory no longer counts. It's all about what we're going to do next. And the energy it takes. I mean, I've been in a series where we had, 16 races. Yeah. I can't imagine that much concentration, keeping everything up and functioning that hard. Was that really fun?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Actually, it was very fun. It was pretty cool. We would just, I got lined out. I got, Robbie Pierce with the Impact Mastercraft set us up with multiple helmets. I think I had 7 helmets that year for all the different series, different driving suits, and I would just end up leaving those. I'd leave all my race gear in the Torque Series. I'd leave all my race gear at the Lucas Series. I had my Desert race gear. I had my SST race gear. So just in multiple bags, I had the SST bag. You get what I'm saying there. And, we just really laid out a schedule, laid out a plan. Amber got to work with the plane tickets, the motel reservations.
Got to.
All that. And,
like it was a special privilege, Amber.
Yeah, just got the calendar out and did it. As a race car driver, I loved it,
Well, it keeps you on, that's
exactly.
for sure.
No, absolutely. And that's what, I even heard those comments. It's like, how are we going to beat you? You have so much seat time, let alone going to the indoor go-kart track.
And you could feel it. You could feel it. When we would race back to back, you'd show up on Thursday for test day, you were on your game.
Yeah.
Because you just got out of a race car.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand that saturation's valuable.
Yeah.
Because now the brain is fully engaged.
Yeah, no, that's true. It also helped me learn, and have ideas. I was working with different crew chiefs, different teams, and, sitting and looking at data from the trucks and just on some of the teams and just learning really more about the cars and really bringing information that I learned over, say, in the Torque Series to Lucas and vice versa, and with the different teams. And I think we really helped develop our race trucks and my driving with that as well.
Now let's jump to another racer going at blistering speeds. Jason Line, the 3-time Pro Stock champion. Jason, welcome to Driver's Talk.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, you, first of all, last year, I've got to congratulate you and the entire Ken Black team for literally showing everybody else how to do it. What was last season like? It had to be a fairy tale for you guys.
Well, believe it or not, we've actually had a better year than that. But it was great. It was fantastic, and I'd be lying if I said we were enthused about the change to fuel injection. We probably cried and complained the most about it, but ended up benefiting the most. So it was good. It really was a good year. We learned a lot. Still a lot to learn, but and that makes it fun. So all in all, it was kind of a dream season for sure.
Jay, I want people to understand the level of almost violence these cars accelerate at. If you're on an airplane next to Jason and it's starting to roll down the taxiway, and for a lot of people that's more G-force than they're used to, Jason's asleep because really, I thought we were still taxiing. I mean,
what is the G-load on a Pro Stock car these days as it leaves the line?
It's just a little over 3.
Just a little over 3.
Well, it's amazing what can become normal. After a while, it's you don't even hardly notice it. It's just it becomes a normal thing. But the first time I ever did it, the first time I let the clutch out, I couldn't push it in fast enough. I wanted the ride to be over.
That may be the most honest thing I've heard from a race driver yet.
Yeah, it's the truth. And I said, man, this thing is insane. And I'd driven 10-second cars, and this thing, that next 4 seconds really, there's a big difference there.
You can't be a car show talking about famous car people without talking about our pal Jay Leno. So we got a hold of Jay, albeit in the waiting room of an executive jet lounge on his way to Geneva to actually present the Nobel Peace Prize. But we surprised him with a little piece of information even he didn't know at the time. Jay, thanks for taking the time.
Guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We look forward to it. Hey, Jay, first of all, congratulations. I see you made Motor Trend's 2016 Person of the Year list as a power guy. You had to be a little surprised with that, were you not?
I just found out from you right now.
Oh, really?
You're number 47.
You're number 47 out of the top 50 guys most influential in the industry.
Well, there you go. So I got to bump off 46 guys to get up there. So.
That's right. You're going to be a busy year.
We also got to ask him about his first experience, about kind of, we called it restoring a car, but it was more like his first experience with a car.
He was very candid with us. Listen to this.
Jay, may I ask you, what was your first vehicle that you restored yourself? What was the beginning of all this?
I wouldn't quite call it a restoration, but when I was 14, I bought a 34 Ford pickup truck from a gas station in Reading, Massachusetts, and my dad and I dragged it back. And those were the days when your dad would give you something. If you can get it running, you can get your license. If you can't get it running, you're going to have to walk, So it took me 2 years or so, and I got it running and, did some of the rudimentary body work on it. And, when you're a kid, you sort of learn as you go. I remember when my dad gave me a Briggs & Stratton engine once. And he said, see if you can get it running. And I took the head off, and I figured, it's running. Look, there's a piece of paper between the head and the block. I'll just throw that away. That must have been jammed in there, when you're 12 years old. So, of course, I fired the engine up. I said, my father said, where's the paper goes in there? That was a head gas. Oh, that's a head gas. So I always, first thing I do, check and make sure the head gas goes in.
Is that one stuck with you a while? Huh?
We've all
done it.
You have to burn your hand on the stove to learn not to touch it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was kind of the first half, part one, if you will, some of our favorite clips from the past. Second half is coming up next week. Please pay attention, because after that, the announcements get really big.